Sir,
Assistant,
I think we have admitted all the attendees.
Should we start?
1 minute, sir, and I will request Ashok to give the introduction for you. Ashok?
Yeah, please.
Good evening, everybody. So, welcome to our Philips webinar series for today on bedside lung ultrasound in intensive care cardiothoracic unit. And today we have a eminent speaker, Dr. Abhijeet, who's assistant professor on cardiac anesthesiology in JN Medical College, Belgaum, and who is working as a consultant cardiac anesthetist in the Dr. Prabhavati Core Hospital in MRC in Belgaum. Today, I think we are focusing on a completely purely focused on a lung ultrasound topic, which will be much more interesting topic, which will be going to cover by Dr. Abhijeet. Sir, we are looking forward to hear from you, sir. Now,
Yeah, should we start?
yes, sir. Please, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. As the host has given the introduction, we will start discussing the topic. Today's topic for the webinar: bedside lung ultrasound in intensive cardiothoracic unit. We will focus on the two protocols of the lung ultrasound. The first one will be the blue protocol. It is a bedside lung ultrasound in emergency, and the other one we will just focus little on the false protocol also, which is a fluid administration limited by the lung sonography. These two protocols are very important in a clinical critical care settings. May it be a cardiothoracic unit, may it be a cardiology unit, may it be a physician's ICU or some other ICUs, even pediatric ICUs also. But one thing is very good in lung ultrasound, that is all the signs, whatever are there, whatever the images you get, they will be same everywhere. So it has a steep learning curve, and you will definitely get a help from this particular thing in managing the patient and coming to a proper conclusive diagnosis and the favorable outcome of the patient by treating them. So in introduction, the point of care ultrasound is firmly established in acute and critical care settings. We have a fast protocol for the common, we have extended fast protocol, you have vascular access ultrasound, you have a focus assess transthoracic echo in emergency for echocardiography, rule out the cardiac conditions. And now what is emerging is a lung ultrasound, or it is becoming an important tool for assessment of the lungs. That is also called as a lung ultrasound for critically ill, that is LUC short form. It explores the lung using ultrasound at the bedside, and it is a non-invasive. It is gaining popularity amongst the intensivists. The lung ultrasound can routinely be performed using basic ultrasound tools at the bedside by ICU physicians and may provide an accurate information on lung status and diagnostic as well as therapeutic relevance of the sensitivity or specificity. If you compare it to the high resolution CT scan, it will be around 90 to 100%. So it is a far good bedside tool for assessing the patient without shifting the patient to the high resolution units and getting the irradiation. And one more important thing is there is a major problem for shifting such a critically ill patients in such settings, because they will have chest drains, they will have inotropic infusions, they will require oxygen during transport, they will require a mechanical ventilation. So anything, if it goes wrong, then it is disastrous for the patient's life. So in such situation, shifting the patient to the cardiothoracic, the HRCT units and all is very difficult. So in such scenarios in ICUs, this plays a very important role. So that's why it is gaining a popularity in the ICU. Another thing, if you take X-ray chest in consideration, it may not yield a specific diagnosis, because usually it is a suboptimal imaging, because you are using a portable X-ray machine, you are putting the patient, the cassette below the patient's chest, lifting it up, such hemodynamically unstable patient, and then you are putting a beam from above somewhere where the equal distances or the distance of the proper view may not be there. So usually it leads to a suboptimal imaging and suboptimal visualization, and the diagnostic accuracy of the X-ray in the ICU, the portable X-ray, is it's very like it ranges from 50 to 100% so it is again not a very good tool for diagnosing the things, the lung. Then important thing is in ultrasound there is no irradiation, and it is a point of care testing, means whenever required you can order a machine or get a machine in the echo machine in the room in the ICU, and you do as and when required. That is a very good thing about the transportable or echo machines. They are usually transportable. So though HRCT thorax is the gold standard for diagnosis of lung pathologies, bedside lung ultrasound has nearly 90 to 100% sensitivity and the specificity for diagnosing any thoracic condition. Lung ultrasound can also be used to guide fluid management, weaning, and therapeutic procedures such as thoracocentesis. It can help in the therapeutic procedures also. Almost all acute life-threatening disorders abut the pleural lines. So this explains the potential of the lung ultrasound. Basically, lung ultrasound is based on the artifacts. It may not show you the actual thing inside. It is you have to conclude, or you have to put your conclusion from the artifacts. So, and if most of the intensivists or the cardiac anesthesiologists, cardiologists managing the physicians managing the ICUs, they are a little oriented to the transthoracic echoes. They are oriented to the vascular access sort of echocardiography. They know. So if they learn this particular thing, it has a steep learning curve. Usually in 6 weeks you can master this particular thing. So it is very easy to learn also. Radiologists, they already do the echoes, so the ultrasound. So they will be having little lesser learning, steeper learning curve than the other people. So coming to the principles of the lung ultrasound, the lung and the critical ultrasound is performed at the best using a simple equipment. In the thorax, gas and fluid have opposite locations because of the gravity in supine position. In pathological processes, they are mingled, generating artifacts. So lung ultrasound basis is artifacts. The lung is the most voluminous organ. So pathologies in standardized areas can be well defined. That means localization to the level of lobe. The pathologies can be localized to the lobar level. All signs arise from the pleural line. It is a reflection of the pleural lines. So like heart, lung is a dynamic organ. The signs arising from the pleural line are foremost dynamic. So it is a sliding, like it is called as a sliding, lung sliding. So lung sliding also plays very important role in differentiating the diagnosis for the lung pathologies. Then the last but not the least, the rule of gravity. So you know the air is usually towards the sky and the fluid is towards the earth. So when the patient lies in a supine position, the upper visualization of the upper lung fields or the over the thorax will be helpful in the diagnosis of the pneumothorax and other lung conditions, while the point towards the earth, that means in the posterolateral basal areas, they will have a pathologies of the we can diagnose the pathologies of fluid in the lungs or pneumonias or the pleural effusions. So there is you should know this term like acoustic impedance Z. So the appearances of lung ultrasound are based on the relative amount of air and the fluid in the lung because of the phenomena called as acoustic impedance. Acoustic impedance is a physical property of a tissue. Describes how much resistance an ultrasound beam encounters as it passes through a tissue. So when a ultrasound beam passes through a tissue, there is a reflection of when there is a change in the interface between the solid, the gas and the liquid. So acoustic impedance depends on the density of the tissue, that is rho, and the speed of the sound wave in that particular medium. So Z is equal to rho into the speed. The amount of reflection that occurs in a perpendicular direction is expressed by reflection fraction. So if you take a Z of one medium and if you take a Z of other medium, then the amount of reflection can be calculated as a reflection fraction. So there are different reflection fractions for different media like air, lungs, they have different. That's why whenever there is the ultrasound travels from one medium to the other medium, there will be an incident intensity, then the refracted intensity of the ultrasound wave, and some waves will travel through the medium, that means transmitted through the medium, that will be called as a transmitted intensity. So the Z1 is the reflection fraction of first medium, and the Z2 is a reflection fraction of the second medium. Coming to the ultrasound is the principal reverberation artifact. So when you have an ultrasound beam put on the ultrasound probe put on the chest, then normally the ultrasound cannot go through the air in the lung. So almost 100% of the ultrasound beam will bounce back over the surface, that means over the rib surface or the chest surface. So it will create a multiple reflections of the pleura, that means the pleural line or the pleura over in the lung tissue, leading to what is called as A lines. So A line is very important line when you learn or when you do a lung ultrasound. Just keep it in mind. We will come to it as the presentation goes forward. So once the ultrasound beam reflects from the pleura is very reflective surface in the pleura, then the reverberation artifacts of that pleural line will cause A lines. Now, if suppose there is no air, which is in the lung, and the lung is filled with water, something like pulmonary edema or septal edema, transudation in the septum or interstitial edema or whatever, in that scenario, the air is replaced by the water. The amount of water may be varied, but it will be there. So some of the ultrasound beams will be reflected from that thickened alveolar septum, leading to something called as B lines. B lines are also called as lung rockets. They will be a perpendicular lines arising from the pleural surface going into the lung tissue. Usually, the microconvex probe or the curvilinear probes are used for the lung ultrasound. So why there are so many probes available, but why we choose or why we use this probe is they have a intermediate frequency of 2 to 5 megahertz. They have high depth of penetration. They will cover a larger area, and the penetration is what is required for doing a lung ultrasound. So microconvex or a curvilinear ultrasound probe and the ultrasound workstation. Usually we prefer an ultrasound workstation which is a transportable, easily transportable, and you can like CX50, the Philips CX50, we can detach that particular workstation from the transport machine and we can get it into the ICU. So the probe best suited for is microconvex. It is having medium intermediate size frequency of 2.5 to 7 megahertz, and if it is not available, you can use a curvilinear probe or a normal echocardiography probe, the 2D echo probe, which is a phased array transducer, and it is also 2.5 to 5 megahertz probe, which it also provides a sufficient imaging quality. But only thing is, if you take a curvilinear probe, it covers 2 to 3 rib spaces. So it aids in very proper diagnosis or proper interpretation of the lung fields. If you have 2 ribs coming in your sector area, it is usually little difficult to diagnose the thing. If you have a bigger surface of ultrasound probe like curvilinear probe, it gives you a more accurate or evaluative sector for the diagnosis. Now, this is a relation between the frequency, penetration, and resolution. As the frequency goes up, the penetration goes down, but the resolution gets up. It is a good resolution. We don't want that thing. So we are choosing the frequency in between 2.5 to 5 megahertz so that we get a adequate penetration and we get a proper resolution also. So low frequency transducers, that's why they are used. So here this slide shows the linear array, the phased array, and the curved linear array transducers. So why we are using this is they will give you an intermediate depth, and the linear probes, they are very good for the bedside lung ultrasound in emergency, procedural guidance, paracentesis, and lung ultrasound, and for thoracentesis and cardiocentesis. Good thing about phased array is you can do a thoracic echo, that means FET protocol also. At the same time, you can do a lung ultrasound also. So when you are doing a false protocol, which combines the lung ultrasound as well as the FET protocol, that means focused transthoracic echo. So in one probe only, you can do both the things, and you can formulate the false protocol plan, and you can treat the patient accordingly. So protocols for the lung ultrasound intensive cardiothoracic care units are BLUE protocol, which is also called as which is a short form for bedside lung ultrasound in emergency. Then you have a false protocol. It is a fluid administration limited by lung ultrasound. You have a ARDS protocol. It is more comprehensive evaluation and analysis of the lung, which considers low voice lung evaluation. Sorry for the mistakes. Low voice evaluation, and it evaluates both the lungs in apical, anterior, posterior, lateral. That is, we are not doing this protocol. This may be done by radiologists. They are more better in this. So the adjunct, there are some adjuncts for this particular lung ultrasound to get to a specific diagnosis and clinical correlation and clinical orientation to treat the patient. So there are some adjuncts like FET protocol, which is a echo of the same, like if suppose you have a pleural pulmonary edema, and if you want to rule out how is the heart, then the FET protocol comes. So if the heart is poor, and then it is a cardiogenic cause. If heart is good, then it is some other thing. So it goes like this. So the adjuncts like FET protocol, then you can do IVC ultrasound. IVC ultrasound will show you the volume status. Then DVT scanning for ruling out the acute pulmonary thromboembolisms, and USG abdomen for whether that fluid is because of the acute kidney injury leading to renal failure, or hepatic injuries leading to the liver failure, all that things. So BLUE protocol versus pink protocol, that means ARDS protocol and false protocol. BLUE protocol considers 3 standardized BLUE points for rapid evaluation of the lung on each side. They are upper BLUE point, lower BLUE point, and PLAPS point. The third point is called as a PLAPS point, which is posterolateral alveolar / pleural syndrome point. Pulse protocol considers standard BLUE points in conjunction with FET echo. It has an addition of transthoracic echo, that means focus assessed transthoracic echo in emergency. Also sometimes IVC analysis and DVT scanning. It is emerging protocol for fluid management in critically and differentiate between the different types of shock, distributive shock and circulatory shocks. So we will stick to these 2 protocols. So lung ultrasound, the positions for the lung ultrasound, the probe positions, they are called as BLUE points. So there are 3 points, that is upper BLUE point, the lower BLUE point, which are on the anterior chest, and then the zone 3, that means third point is PLAPS point. So the easiest thing to identify this point, where should we put this transducer probe, is if you put your two hands on the palmar's surface on the patient's chest, on which side you want to do ultrasound. The sternum should have the tips of your fingers, and the the thumb should be overlying the other palm. So if we put these things in on the patient chest, your hands, then the usually the junction of the middle and the ring finger is a upper blue point. The base of the lower palm's middle finger is a lower blue point, and the flaps point is usually achieved by putting a vertical line through this lower blue point, and this line intersects the posterior axillary line. So draw a posterior axillary line and draw a perpendicular line from the second blue point, which gives you a posterolateral basal flaps point, posterolateral alveolar and pleural syndrome point. This is called as flaps because many of the pleural syndromes like interstitial syndrome, pulmonary edema, consolidations, ARDS, and all interstitial pathologies are diagnosed at that particular point. So it is popularly called as a flaps point. So, so the upper blue point is at the middle of the upper hand. The lower point is middle of the lower palm. The flaps point is defined by the intersection of the horizontal line at the level of lower blue point and the vertical line at the posterior axillary line, sensitive for detection of posterolateral alveolar and pleural syndromes. These are, if you do it on both the sides, they become 6. So it is a 6 blue points of the lung ultrasound. So what are the modes of echo? So there are only 2 modes. There is no Doppler in it. So you have a real time imaging and you have M mode imaging. So, and what are the pathologies you diagnose? So all acute critically ill patient who is becoming ill and critical will have this particular diagnosis: pleural effusions, pneumothorax, pneumonias, interstitial syndromes, pulmonary edema, atelectasis, pneumonitis, acute exacerbations of COPDs, asthmas, and pulmonary embolism sometimes. So all these things can be diagnosed with the lung ultrasound. So before going into the details of the lung ultrasound, just by heart these 2 lines and 10 signs of the lung ultrasound. This is very important slide of the presentation. If you by heart this slide, then and if you are little bit able to do the lung ultrasound, you will get it very fast. The lung ultrasound you will be mastering very fast. So there are 2 lines, A line and B line. A line is a normal lung. B line is interstitial syndrome or a pulmonary edema. In pulmonary edema, there are septal or lung rockets. Usually they are 5 to 8, and if they are there, then it is usually a interlobar septa thickening fluid, that is interstitial edema. And if there are many, more than 8, then they are usually presentation of a alveolar edema. Then you have a bat sign and a seashore sign. These signs are normal lung. You have a stratosphere sign or a barcode sign, then it is usually seen in pneumothorax. It is a diagnostic of pneumothorax. You have a fractal sign, shred sign, and tissue-like sign. These are seen in interstitial syndrome, pneumonias of extensive etiology, non-extensive etiology, depending upon the area of involvement. Then you have a sinusoid sign, ward sign, and jellyfish sign. They are seen in pleural effusion. So fractal sign, shred sign, tissue-like sign, consolidation, sinusoid, quad, and jellyfish pleural effusion, stratosphere, barcode, pneumothorax, bat sign, seashore sign, normal. There are 2 important points or related to pneumothorax. One is lung point and one is a lung pulse. Both are very specific, 100% diagnosis of pneumothorax. I will go through each and every signs and points and lines one by one. So be ready for it. So the profiles, depending upon the lines, there are profiles of the lung ultrasound. See, the lung sliding is whenever there is a respiration, the parietal pleura and the visceral pleura will rub around each other because of the presence of slight fluid in the lung, which is a physiological fluid. So they will create a sliding over one another, leading to a lung sliding. And A profile is associated with lung sliding and A lines. The A prime profile means A dash profile is an A profile with abolished lung sliding. There are multiple A lines, but there is no lung slide. That is a A dash profile. B profile is associated with anterior lung sliding with lung rockets. Lung rockets is the B lines. B dash profile is a B profile with abolished lung sliding. So A profile, A dash profile, B profile, B dash profile. If you have A or B profile, it is called as C profile. Sometimes A, sometimes B, or sometimes very thick tissue-like consistency. It is a C profile. Indicates anterior lung consolidation regardless of size and number. A thickened irregular pleural line is an equivalent called as Z line. A or B profile is a half A of one lung and half B of the other lung. They are seen in unilateral syndrome, sometimes endobronchial intubations, one lung collapse, complete collapse of one lung. We are not going into that particular thing. I will speak on it in 1 or 2 slides afterwards. So coming to the A profile, what are these all profiles and all? So can you see a ultrasound on the left side of the image? So A profile of the lung is you have a pleural line. These two vertical arrows are showing the rib shadows. They are rib shadows. Then you have a pleural line, and whatever moving is a lung sliding. The pleura are sliding on one another, parietal and visceral pleura, giving rise to that lung sliding. And whatever you see a reverberation artifact down at equidistant level, these are the artifacts arising from the pleural line. They are called as A lines. So it usually, this field, if you take the curvilinear probe, this is done by I think the phased array transducer. It is X5-1 adult. Yeah, it is a phased array transducer. If you take a curvilinear probe, you have 2 to 3 rib spaces. So it looks like a bat. So usually it is called as a bat sign. So the normal lung looks like a bat sign. So the lung sliding is present. There is a bat sign. Then if you put a M mode across this particular thing between the 2 ribs, over the A lines, you get a C and shore sign. So this profile is called as A profile, and it is a normal lung profile. So I'll just move this image. Okay, so there is a lung sliding and there is a bat sign, and there are multiple A lines equidistantly spaced. So bat sign, lung sliding, and A lines, it is a normal lung. A profile of the lung ultrasound at upper blue point is a normal lung. Again, so I have shown a picture of bat there. Just compare the bat's wing with the rib shadows, and between the 2 rib shadows, there is a parietal and visceral pleura which are rubbing around each other. In the second picture, there is a little less lung sliding. In the first picture, the moving image, there is a proper lung sliding scene, and you can see the A lines between the 2 ribs. They are quite equidistantly placed. So when I put a M mode across it by decreasing the sector depth and putting a M mode between the 2 ribs, what we get is in M mode is something called as C on the upper side and gravel or the shore on the lower side of the image. So in the near field, you are getting a C-like thing, like C, and then there is an edge, and then there is a shore. So this is called as C-shore sign. So C-shore sign at the right upper blue point, the lung ultrasound, suggests this is a normal lung profile. This M mode is very important in all the lung ultrasound. It comes to very proper diagnosis if there is an pneumothorax and if there is a pulmonary edema, if there is a normal lung. So it helps in differentiation of all this. Coming to the B profile of the lung ultrasound. So in B profile, what exactly happens is because of the presence of the fluid in the septa and in the alveoli, there are abolished A signs, A lines. So A line in the lung which are reverberation artifacts of the pleural line, they are abolished. And what takes over is there are rocket-like things or comet-like things which arise from the pleural surface and goes deeper into the lung fields radially. So that is a B profile of the lung ultrasound. So they are usually called as lung rockets or pleural rockets or comet tails. If they are 1 to 2 and if they are seen in Plapp's point, they are usually normal because it is like a decubitus position. Sometimes lung accumulate fluid, little fluid accumulates there and giving rise to 1 or 2 comet tails. So they are not very important. What is important is more than 5 to 8 or 5 to 8. So if you have 5 to 8 B lines, then usually it is a interstitial edema, interstitial pulmonary edema. So they are called as septal rockets or septal or lung rockets. If there are multiple, more than 10, 15 like that, or full interrib space is covered with the So there is a lung sliding, absence of A line. In M mode, you have only shore. There is no C. Most of the things is shore. And presence of Z lines. Presence of Z lines. They are indicating of a B profile of the lung. So have a look here. So you have 2 rib shadows. And between the rib shadows, there is a lung sliding happening. So lung sliding is there, but from the pleural surface, there are multiple lung rockets which are thrown into the lung fields. So this is a frank pulmonary edema, okay, alveolar pulmonary edema. B profile of the lung ultrasound and right upper lobe, blue point, frank pulmonary edema. Coming to the C profile of the lung ultrasound. So in C profile, what we have is a lung becomes like a solid organ. Usually it is an aerated organ. It becomes little solid organ. So what usually the sonologists tell it as a hepatization of the lung. So there is a comparison. There is a thing which is comparable there in the lung field. When you are putting a probe at a Plapp's point, usually liver is there on the right side and spleen is on the left side. So if the lung ultrasound is getting compared with the, or same like the liver ultrasound or the spleen ultrasound, then it is usually becoming a tissue-like sign or tissue-like ultrasound density. So usually such type of thing happens when there is a consolidation. So the A lines, what should be there, equidistant line, they get little bit disturbed with the solid or the reflective surface down in the solid lung, that means consolidated lung, or it is also a air bronchobronch, you can say. So that will give rise to a fractal sign. So there are multiple fractured lines and there will be a tissue-like consistency. They are also called as shred sign or a fractal sign. You see here, see these A lines, see down in the field. So these particular things are a broken A lines, you can call it, or there are multiple fractured lines there. So this particular thing is seen in consolidation. You can have some pleural effusion associated with the consolidation, secondary to post pneumonic pleural effusion or inflammatory. So that can be associated with the shred sign and the tissue-like consistency of the lung. So this is very diagnostic of consolidation. Now there are 2 things to be considered here. One is there can be a collapse of the lung. So there can be consolidation or can be a collapse of the lung which can give rise to such profiles. So in such cases, the clinical scenario helps. If your patient is running fever, if the counts are increasing, if the patient has culture positives in the blood, in the secretions of the tracheal tube or the throat secretions, then usually we get a diagnosis of the consolidation of the pneumonia, or else it is a collapse. Coming to the A' profile, that means A' profile of the lung ultrasound. The A' profile of the blue protocol is multiple pleural A lines. They are more than usually A lines. They are not equidistantly placed. In normal lung, they are equidistantly placed. And here there are multiple A lines suggestive of gaseous presence below the pleura. If you do a M mode at that particular in between the rib space, you get everywhere only C. There is no shore. So loss of C shore and presence of only C in the M mode, and the multiple abundant A lines in the 2D mode, you have a A- profile. Usually this sign is usually called as barcode sign in the M mode. I have put a barcode just to compare with this. So this particular profile, A- profile, is diagnostic, specifically diagnostic of pneumothorax. Now, if you have a pneumothorax which is of lesser variety, that means the lung is not completely collapsed and non-movable, it is partially movable. In such situation, you have something called as lung point in M mode. So whenever the aerated lungs during inspiration inflates in a size and comes into your picture of the ultrasound probe or in the sector of the ultrasound probe, the normal lung profile comes. And again it goes with the respiration. So change from a stratosphere sign or a barcode sign to a seashore sign and vice versa is 100% specific of pneumothorax. So these are the four M modes here. Seashore sign, which is a normal lung, and stratosphere sign, which is a pneumothorax. Lung pulse. Now coming to the lung pulse, I'll just talk on it. Lung pulse is on the left side because there is a cardiac movement happening. Because of the continuous cardiac movement during the ultrasound, this lung pulse appears, coming going of the lung between the M mode of the ultrasound will create this particular thing, lung pulse. It is called as lung pulse, and lung point can be seen on both left as well as the right pleura because of the movement of the lung, because of the inspiration in the pneumothorax chest. Coming to the B- profile of the lung ultrasound. The B- profile is B profile with absence of lung sliding. So B lines are there, but there is no movement of the lung. So this particular profile can be seen in pneumonia, consolidation, and collapse. So if you can appreciate on the first image, there is a lung sliding which is very obvious, but there are multiple rockets happening emerging from the pleura. So this is a B profile with the minimal with the lung sliding, and in the other image the things are reversed, I think, the headings. So in the second image there is very minimum lung sliding happening, and you can see some fractal lines here placed, not very obvious, but they are there. So this is more in favor of consolidation. This is more in favor of pulmonary edema. So this is again a tissue-like sign of the consolidation. Coming to the pleural effusion, the diagnosis of the pleural effusion has been very interesting or very favorite topic of the sonologists in ICU settings. So what exactly we have to see in lung ultrasound for the pulmonary, the pleural effusion? So in 2D mode, you have a pleural line with the lung line. So you have a visceral pleura and we have a parietal pleura. Both are separated here, not with the gas, but with the fluid. So if we draw a line parallel to the visceral pleura and the parietal pleura and draw two vertical lines which are limiting the rib shadows, it gives you a quadrangle. It is called as a quad sign. So it is called as quad sign. When you put a M mode across the between the two rib shadows, you have something called as sinusoid sign. Where the lung comes in inspiration and goes down in the fluid, giving rise to a sinusoid type of wave pattern. Sinusoid type of the wave pattern. And important thing for this is, if you have a distance of more than 15 between the inspiratory point and the pleural surface, then you can safely do a diagnostic or a therapeutic puncture or a tap for the pleural effusion. So this is usually seen in lower blue points or a collapse points. I have forgot to mention the probe positions and the direction of the pointer. In all lung ultrasound, the direction of the pointer is cephalad, and probe is perpendicular to the ribs. Very important. So probe is always perpendicular to the ribs, and the pointer is directed towards the cephalad position or towards the head of the patient. So here in the first image, you can see the lung coming and going, and this is a costophrenic angle. Here is a liver, and you have a pleural effusion. Now, what is jellyfish sign? So jellyfish sign is because of the moving lung in and out, that pleural effusion shape, the shape of the pleural effusion will look like a jellyfish, the moving jellyfish in the sea. That's why it is popularly called as a jellyfish sign. Jellyfish sign is very diagnostic of the pleural effusion. The amount of pleural effusion cannot be assessed with the jellyfish sign. There are many other methods to know the amount of fluid inside. If you have a posterior border of the pleural effusion, that means the parietal pleura, and the medial border of the effusion, that means either a liver or the heart or the lung, which is forming the medial border. If you take that distance, the horizontal distance, how much centimeter of that distance is, that much 100 ml will be a effusion, but it is a rough estimation, not very accurate one. But most of the times it is the correlation is there. So if you have a 5 centimeter diameter of that particular borders, then usually 500 ml will be the effusion. It's like that. So here you can see the lung is collapsed because of the massive effusion. If you take a diameter from the medial aspect of this lung to the parietal pleura, if you have a diameter of this is 10 centimeters, then it becomes a 1,000 ml of the effusion. You can see multiple fractal lines inside. These are secondary to the collapse. This patient didn't have fever. He just he was a post POD 5th or 7th day and had a acute distress, change in the respiration. When we did a pleural scanning, we found this effusion and there was a collapsed lung. Once the tube was put, within 4 to 5 hours, patient was settled. And on the next day, day before, like the procedure, second day of the procedure, the tube was removed and the patient was again discharged back to the ward. So this is a sinusoid sign, and this is a quad sign. So this is a parietal pleura, this is a visceral pleura, and these are the ribs margins which we have delineated, and it gives a quadrant. This is also a quad sign. This is a collapse secondary to the massive pleural effusion. So the decision making from the blue protocol. So you have a lung sliding, upper and lower blue points. If you have a lung sliding present, and if you have a B profile in the lung ultrasound, the diagnosis is pulmonary edema. If you have a profile and lung sliding is present, it is a normal lung ultrasound. So with normal lung ultrasound, patient can't have distress. So sequential venous analysis is needed. So if you have a thrombosed veins in the Doppler, the diagnosis is pulmonary embolism. If you have veins good free, then you check for the collapse point. In collapse point is you have a shred sign, tissue-like sign and all, it becomes a pneumonia. If there is no shred sign, no fractal sign, and lung is normal at that particular position, then it is a exacerbation of COPD or it is a asthma, acute episode of asthma. So this is how you diagnose the COPDs, pneumonias, pulmonary embolism, pulmonary edema. If there is either A or B profile or C profile, it is usually pneumonia. If there is abolished lung sliding, then and if there is a multiple lung rockets available there, then it is a B dash profile. It is sign of pneumonia. If there is a dash profile, and that means abolished lung sliding, and you have lung point as well as lung pulse, then it is a pneumothorax. If it is a dash profile without lung point, then you should go for the other diagnostic modalities like HRCT or so. Same explained in a little easier manner. Accuracy of the lung ultrasound in emergency. So if you take a pulmonary edema and constitute a B profile, it is a 95% specific and 97% sensitive. If you take COPD and asthma with the normal lung profile, it is 97% specific and 89% sensitive. Pulmonary embolism A profile with venous thrombosis, 100% specific. Pneumothorax, absent anterior lung sliding and presence of A dash profile, 100% sensitive, specific. Pneumonias, B dash profile is 100% specific, but not very sensitive. A or B profile is 100% specific. C profile, 99% specific. This A profile without DVT is called as nude profile. So a normal lung profile with no DVT and no flaps. Definite diagnosis of COPD and acute exacerbation. Coming to the false protocol. False protocol is fluid administration limited by lung sonography. False protocol combines bedside lung ultrasound in emergency with focus assessed transthoracic echo in emergency, called as FADE protocol, to differentiate between different types of shocks and manage the fluid therapy in the intensive cases. Just before going this false protocol, you should know a little bit about the FADE protocol, because it is a part of the false protocol. So these are the FADE protocol. This is for the transthoracic echo. That means the assessment of the heart. So these are the positions for the FADE protocol. Position 1 is subsequent view. Position 2 is apical view. And position 3 is a parasternal view. This green thing is a pointer direction. So whenever using a phased array transducer, the pointer should be in particular direction, in that particular direction, for obtaining the parasternal views and the FADE views. And the fourth point in the FADE view is the pleural scanning. Here also pleural scanning comes. So the basic FADE views, in subcostal 4-chamber with pointer direction towards left, you have a 4 chambers of the heart. In apical 4-chamber, the longitudinal or the long axis presentation of the 4-chamber of the heart. Then the parasternal long axis, when the pointer direction is towards the patient right shoulder, and parasternal short axis, where LV and RV is in short axis, when the pointer is directed towards the patient's left shoulder. So going quickly through the views, this is apical 4-chamber. This is parasternal long axis. This is subcostal 4-chamber and the parasternal short axis. These are the 4 views which are very important in doing the focused echocardiography in emergency. So coming to the introduction of false, the fluid administration limited by lung sonography is not yet supported by many clinical studies, but should be considered as a potential source of help in a difficult situations in critically ill patients. It is based on sequential concepts. Pulmonary edema generates a thickening of interlobar septa, of which their subpleural end is accessible using a lung ultrasound. A lines transform into B lines when you give a fluid therapy, when the pulmonary occlusion pressures goes above 18 millimeters of mercury. This is very important point when you are treating a critically ill patient. So whenever you are giving a fluid challenges to the patient or a fluid therapy to the patients, the fluid starts accumulating in the lung if the heart doesn't take the load. So the A lines will change into B lines. The use of lung artifacts allows a direct assessment of lung water, more specifically interstitial lung water, what no other bedside tool can do. The false protocol assumes that the pulmonary edema is the most harmful consequence of the fluid overload in extreme emergency. Already patients are sick, and if you are overloading them with the fluid, then it gives you a worse scenario. It follows the Wales classification of the shock, the circulatory shock, the distributive shock, the septic shock, hypolemic shock. The best of the simple cardiac sonography, that is FATE, is used with blue protocol to complete a false protocol. So what is the step 1 in false protocol? Search for a substantial pericardial effusion assimilated to a tamponade, then an enlarged right ventricle assimilated to a pulmonary embolism. So whenever you have a patient with shock, first step is to see whether there is a cardiac cause of the shock. So the false protocol first step is to see for the pericardial tamponade and to see the enlarged right ventricle for signs of pulmonary embolism. Then comes the second step. Second step is look for the A- profile. If A- profile is there, there is a tension pneumothorax. So it is an obstructive shock. So the pericardial tamponade, the pulmonary embolism, occlusion of the pulmonary arteries, and occlusion of the lung, expansion of the lung because of the tension pneumothorax, all that lead to an obstructive shock. The patient will deteriorate very fast and it may arrest. So this is the first step is to rule out obstructive shock. Then see for the B profile. If the B profile is there, there is a lung in the fluid in the lung leading, and look for the cardiogenic shock. That means if the shock is originated because of the LV failure or dysfunction of the left ventricle. So we will just go through this three steps here. So how the cardiac tamponade will look like in the PET view. So if you do a apical 4-chamber view, you have a large massive collection around the heart, and the cavities of the heart, that is right ventricle, left ventricle, RA or LA, will have a pressure from outside. That means they will be collapsing one. So there is a compression of RARV, IVC will be distended, left atrial compression will be there, reduced chamber size will be there, reciprocal side changes with the respiration between the right and the left ventricles, and exaggerated and reciprocal respiratory variations of the mitral and the tricuspid valve velocities. All these are very detailed things, but in short, there will be a pressure generation from the outside of the heart leading to decreased output from the heart. In pulmonary embolism, usually have a RV which is double or triple the size of the LV, and there will be akinesia of the free wall of the RV called as McConnell's sign, and there will be a huge dilatation of tricuspid valve leading to tricuspid regurgitation, usually severe. And if you put a continuous wave Doppler across that tricuspid valve, the TR jet, you will have a pulmonary arterial hypertension, usually more than 60 millimeters of mercury. So quickly you should assess the right ventricle at that particular time using the tricuspid annular plane systolic exertions, EDI, tie index, and these are the all RV function with depending upon the RV TAPSE. So usually in such situations of the acute pulmonary embolism, you get TAPSE of 5 to 10, where the RV function is reduced to 20% to 30%. Then rule out the next thing. That means the cardiogenic shock. So cardiogenic shock presents with the LV dysfunction. Now in this particular patient of ours, there is a acute myocardial infarction, probably the septal wall or the inferoseptal lemma. In such situations, you have a acute MR also because of the PML restriction or collapse. Then it leads to a severe mitral regurgitation, and it can lead to a LV dysfunction associated with severe mitral regurgitation will lead to a cardiogenic shock. And in the false protocol, you have a apical 4-chamber view here of the FATE protocol, and you have a sliding lung sign, the B lines of the lung ultrasound. So combination of the lung ultrasound B lines or B profile and the LV dysfunction with valvular regurgitation in a FADE protocol, these two combines together to diagnose it as a cardiogenic shock. This is the dysfunctional LV. If the patient presents in a shock, definitely the diagnosis will be the shock because of the LV dysfunction. That means a cardiogenic shock. So this person's LV is only 30%. Now coming to the next step, step 4. If there is no A- profile and nor B profile, then either there is a hypovolemic shock or a distributive shock. These are the only two things which are remaining now. So then you start a therapeutic management. If you don't have B lines, you are sure that there is no fluid in the lung. So start the proper fluid management, and there is no A- profile. That means there is no pneumothorax. So you start fluid resuscitation. If there is a profile, fluid can be administered. A notion of interest of an intensivist who use volume resuscitation in a distributive shock. Now here comes the role. If there are A lines, you can freely give fluid. So there is no need to start inotropes if there is a hypotension. Now intensivists who would rather use vasopressors may appreciate that the false protocol allow them to avoid giving these drugs in underestimate get up the patient from the something called as a hypovolemic shock. The improvement in a clinical biological signs of a circulatory failure with an unchanged A profile under fluid therapy defines a hypovolemic shock. Now you have to support this particular thing with the FATE. So if you do a FATE protocol and parasternal short axis view, you usually have a papillary muscle kissing sign. It is very specific for a hypovolemia. So because of the low LV EDV, and the high contractions of the heart or increased tachycardias and all, the two papillary muscle come and meet each other. So giving rise to very less fluid in the heart or very less volume in the heart, called as a papillary muscle kissing sign. So it is very specific for the hypovolemia. So if the patient has hypotension and shock, and if you have such type of picture with good LV function, but there is no volume in the LV, it is usually a hypovolemia. So if you put a M mode across this, the two papillary muscles are seen very properly meeting in midline. Along with that, you have a blue protocol. That means there is a lung sliding and there is a profile. That means there are A lines. So there is no fluid in the lung. So no fluid in the lung and papillary muscle kissing sign in the 2D echo or FATE protocol, you have a diagnosis of shock because of the hypovolemia. Again, you can go to the IVC analysis or IVC ultrasound. So IVC ultrasound will show you a IVC collapsibility. It will be a very easily collapsible IVC with good A profile in the lung. Comes to the next step. If we have ruled out this hypovolemic shock, if no clinical improvement and appearance of the anterior A lines, search more laterally or iatrogenic interstitial syndrome. That means you have started developing pulmonary edema because of the fluid challenges and preceding event to an alveolar edema. This is called as a false endpoint. That means the time to discontinue the fluid therapy. The fluid protocol rules out obstructive, cardiogenic and hypovolemic shock to expedite the diagnosis of last remaining cause. That means a diagnosis by exclusion of distributive shock. Usually distributive shock in such scenarios is a septic shock. The FAST protocol aims at decreasing the high mortality from the septic shock because of unnecessarily fluid administration. What is the limitation of FAST protocol? If the patient presents from beginning with the lung rockets, that means B profile from the beginning, then we can't apply this particular thing in the practice. So on admission, because of no transformation of A lines to the B lines, IVC ultrasound or caval ultrasound will be a very good help as a supportive evidence for the fluid management. In short, we will go through the FATE protocol of the IVC. So for the IVC IVC visualization, you go in the subcostal view and the pointer is directed towards the capillary. Some echocardiographers, they do point it towards the pelvis also. It is good, but the interpretation should be according to the position of the pointer. So you can see here, this is the liver in the near field. That in the far field there is a the lung or the liver shadows, and then there is a IVC in between. So RA, the IVC is joining into the RA. RA, IVC, and the liver on both the sides. This is in our patient using the same transthoracic echo probe, the phased array transducer. We are visualizing the IVC. With the respiration, the IVC is collapsing in between, and this is the M mode across that IVC, which gives you a good platform to see the change in the IVC diameters and the collapsibility index to calculate the collapsibility index. So this is M mode IVC collapsibility in the normal individual where there is no over distension in the fluid. This is a patient where you have a the largest diameter of 2.8 centimeter, 2.08 centimeters, and the minimum diameter of 1.86 centimeters. So there is less than 50% collapse of the IVC. You have a chart for the calculation of IVC collapsibility. If the IVC size is less than 17 mm and if the collapsibility is 50%, then usually RA pressures are 5 or CVP is 5. If the IVC size is more than 17 mm, if there is a more than 50% collapse, IVC is 10, the RA pressures are 10. If the IVC collapsibility is reduced, that means less than 50%, the RA pressures are rising up, it is 15. It means there is a more fluid administration than required. And if there is a dense distended IVC and there is no collapse with respiration, inspiration, then it is the RA pressures are usually in the range of 18 to 20 millimeters of mercury. So estimations of the volume status and PA pressures. In such situation, you can also see the patient's tricuspid valve, put a continuous wave Doppler across it to know the pulmonary artery systolic pressures, to know the status of pulmonary artery hypertension. So if you see this maximum pressure gradient, pressure gradient of 27 millimeters of mercury, you add the CVP by calculating the CVP through this formula in a spontaneously breathing patient. If you add these two, suppose here is less than 50% collapse and IVC is more than 17 mm diameter, then CVP is 15. 15 plus the peak TR jet velocity of 27, peak pressure gradient is 27, giving rise to PA systolic pressure of 42 millimeters of mercury. So decision making from the pulse protocol. So rule out obstructive shock. That means pulmonary embolism by McConnell sign, thrombus in the PA, stretched out moderator band in the RV and distended RV more than twice that of the LV. Rule out the pericardial tamponade. But if there is no obstructive shock, come down to the ruling out of the cardiogenic shock by using the blue protocol. Blue protocol will show you the pulmonary edema, that means B lines. In ruling out obstructive shock, with the blue protocol, there will be a pneumothorax, that is A- profile. If it is not there, C for the pulmonary edema, that is a B profile. And if there is a B profile, C for the LV function. LV function is reduced, LV volumes are high, LA is dilated, there is a regional wall motion abnormality, there are valvular regurgitations, then it is a cardiogenic shock. If they are not there, come down, see for the parasternal short axis, look for the kissing papillary muscles and start fluid administration, see for the A profile in the blue protocol. If it is there present, start giving fluid, pressure will come up, patient will be relieved of hypolemic shock. If patient's pressures are not coming up and appearance of the blue B profile of the lung ultrasound is starting, then with fluid therapy there is no improvement and appearance of the B profile, and look for the heart, LV function is normal, RV functions are near normal and normal valves, then it is a distributive shock or a septic shock. B profile start appearing in the field when the PCWP is more than 18 mm of Hg. So it is a combination of FATE as well as a BRU protocol, which completes a pulse protocol. So in absence of cardiac window, the section pulmonary embolism of the BLUE protocol can be used for diagnosis, and it is assumed that cardiogenic shock is of left-sided origin. For the pulse protocol, we assume that the cardiogenic shock is usually from the left side. So look at this. So near normal LV function, but there are B lines after fluid therapy, and there is no improvement in the pressure. This shows there is a distributive shock. You have to support this particular evidence with blood culture and other modalities like increasing counts, increasing leukocyte count, leukocytosis, and other features of the septic shock, like warm shock. This is in short the tree for decision making for the pulse protocol. This ends the protocols. If we have a time, we will just go through the self-assessment exercise. As it is not a conversative session or interactive session, I may not be able to communicate with each participant. So I will just run through the slides. Keep this in mind. For the BLUE protocol decision-making tree, you have to keep it in mind, and we will go ahead. So here, is there a lung sliding present? Yes. Are there A lines? Yeah, there are A lines which are equidistantly placed. Yes. Now go to the M mode. Is there a C-shore sign? Yes, there is a C and there is a shore. What is the diagnosis? This is a normal lung. Coming to the next. This is done at right lower blue point. I will just play this image. Okay. So, is there lung sliding present? Yes, it is there. Are there A lines? Yeah, there are A lines which are equidistantly placed. See, this particular thing is done by a curvilinear probe, a curvilinear array transducer, probe transducer, which is the intermediate frequency. See how nicely the image quality is. Because of this, the probe face, the surface of the probe is big enough. It gives you a very proper delineation of the lung ultrasound. So if you can see here A lines which are equidistantly placed in between, but there are multiple lung rockets. So because of these lung rockets, the A lines are almost diminishing. So are there A lines? Yes, they are there. But more than that, there are lung rockets. There are multiple lung rockets which are almost 20 in this particular field. So is there a C-shore sign? No. In the M mode is there? No, it's not. Diagnosis is pulmonary edema. This is M mode. So here there is no C and shore. Only shore is there. Now here, is there a lung sliding? Yes, there is a lung sliding. Are there A lines? No. Are there B lines or lung rockets? They are there. Is there a C-shore sign? We have to go for that M mode. We'll see. Is there a quad sign? Can you see here? If you put a horizontal line here, and if you put this rib space border and the other rib space border, you will get a quadrangle there. So that is a quad sign. Is there a jellyfish sign? Yeah, it is there. This looks like a jellyfish moving in the sea because of the movement of the lung. If you do a M mode across it, you will get this sinusoid. So is there a sinusoid sign? Yes, and there is no C-shore sign. This concludes the diagnosis of pulmonary edema with some added pleural effusion. Here, yes, lung sliding is present. A lines, no A lines, very minimum 1 or 2. Are there B lines? Yes, there are there. No C-shore sign, only shore. Diagnosis pulmonary edema. So in conclusion, lung ultrasound should be considered a reasonable bedside gold standard for diagnosing acute respiratory failures in intensive care settings. BLUE protocol and the FALS protocol, two main applications of the lung ultrasound in critically ill, are simple to use. At each step, beginning with the choice of equipment, the BLUE protocol directly scans the lung to assess the cause of the respiratory failure Pulse protocol considers direct marker for the fluid overload at the lung surface in patients with septic shock. With these applications, lung ultrasound appears once again as a visual stethoscope, like a visual stethoscope, and should be tailored as a new kind of visual medicine. Disciplines including pediatrics, cardiology, nephrology, neurology, internal medicine, everybody can use this particular modality for adaptation to treat their patients and come to a specific diagnosis for a specific treatment. Take-home message is, should be considered, lung ultrasound should be considered and as a reasonable bedside gold standard. Blue protocol provides accurate information for the lung status and diagnostic as well as therapeutic relevance with high specificity and sensitivity. Pulse protocol depicts the fluid overload at the lung surface in patients with distributive shock, helps in differentiation of the shocks. Finding obtained by the bedside lung ultrasound like FALS or FED protocols should be correlated with clinical and biochemical evaluations. Together, they will definitely help in formulating the best treatment plans for the favorable outcome of critically ill patient in intensive cardiothoracic units or intensive cardiac units or intensive respiratory units. References? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was really a wonderful presentation, and you covered all the topics of the bedside ultrasound utilities so detailedly and so depth. So truly no words to say. And then this is the topic which we have expected so long to do it, and really appreciate it because you have taken your time and effort to bring in such a wonderful presentation. And there are a couple of chat box in the queries, sir. Even the chat box says how depth you have covered. You have covered so depth, sir. There are some couple of questions. So shall I dictate, sir, and then you just please answer it, sir?
Yeah, please.
The first question is, which probe is ideal for ultrasound guided pleural tap?
If you are using a ultrasound probe for tapping, microconvex probe will be better because it has a very lesser surface of contact. And another thing is, I recommend to use the probe with a glove. So if you put a jelly in the glove and if you put a microconvex probe into the glove, the jellied glove, and if you put on the for doing echo, doing that ultrasound for the pleural tapping, it will give you a very aseptic field. So you can do that. But a good probe is this one. Next, you can use is a phased array transducer, that is regular transthoracic probe, because it is available everywhere and it is also having a lesser surface area. Another thing is, as you are doing a pleural tap, that means there is a large pleural collection. One. So there is no much depth required for the ultrasound probe. So you can use the higher frequency probes, not a problem. Yeah.
The next question is, that's the best formula for pleural effusion volume estimation.
Actually, there is no best formula for pleural effusion estimation. So what we usually do is, we measure the distance of parietal pleura from the parietal pleura to the visceral surface, whichever is there. So, and include lung in between. So you can't exclude lung between. So, and it depends on the position where you are doing a ultrasound, means pleural scanning. So if you are doing at very lower ends, then you may underestimate the effusion, because usually liver is there on the right side and costodiaphragmatic surface will be there on both the sides, left and right. So you may underestimate it. So usually if you are going to do it, you do it in a lower blue point area or little higher rib spaces, and you include the lung in between the lines. So if you are drawing a line to estimate the pleural effusion, you put a one point on the parietal pleura and the other point on the medial viscera. That means usually it is a medial border, or medial pleura, or the visceral pleura of the mediastinum. So between the two, if you see and you estimate, suppose 10 centimeters or so, then definitely that is a more accurate assessment of the volume. what we usually do is, what people do is, they mistake this particular thing. They usually measure a distance from the parietal pleura till the lung surface. And usually they do it at the lower rib spaces. So that will give you a very underestimation of the pleural effusion. So if you do it from the parietal pleura to the, if there is a massive effusion, you can obviously see the mediastinal pleura also, but not, you will see a lung. So you measure these two. If you possible, you exclude the lung. If the lung is coming in between and going, then take the medial border of that particular lung. So if you do that, it will give you a more proper estimation of volume. Since how much centimeter is the resistance is, that much ml, 100 ml fluid will be there into 100. Like suppose it is a 10 centimeter, then usually fluid will be 1000 ml. Again, I am specifying it because it may not correlate. This is a like rough calculation.
The next question also same, sir. How to measure pleural effusion accurately? Already have covered it. The another question, sir.
I don't know if there is any other method of doing it, because I'm not a radiologist. There may, if somebody can throw a light on that, if some formula is there, then they can apply it. But according to me, do it at little higher space, intercostal space, and include the lung in between. The lung which is coming and going, include that lung. That will definitely come to near accurate volume.
There is another question, sir. Can we differentiate collapse of lung versus consolidation?
Consolidation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, in consolidation at collapse point, the consolidation at collapse point is having a tissue-like consistency. And there is very less sliding. Because there is a consolidation, the lung is usually stuck to the pleura. So that is one very important differentiating point. And you have little minimum effusion. These are very two important points. Because in effusion associated with consolidation, that means pneumonia, the effusion is not that much. While in collapse, you have a massive pleural effusion. If there is a massive effusion, then only collapse will occur. So I differentiate according to these 2 points, with these 2 points. So if there is a massive effusion and you get a shred sign or tissue-like sign or a fractal sign, then easily it is a lung collapse. If you have a minimum pleural effusion and minimum lung sliding and tissue-like sign, the shred sign, the fractal sign, then it is a consolidation. And consolidation is present, is diagnosed at collapse point, while the collapse and all can be seen in the lower blue point, at the lower blue point, means anterior chest wall. Very important, very good question it was.
Good evening, sir. Basavaraj here.
Yeah. Hi,
sir, yeah, good, sir. See, sir, really, it was a wonderful presentation. There's one last question from my side, sir, because the situation is all COVID-19 was going on. So I just wanted to know how important or effective this lung scanning into the COVID patients. Can we diagnose the lung conditions in early stages?
Oh, very nice question actually. See, if you see the COVID guidelines for the evaluation or seeing the lungs, then the bedside lung ultrasound is included in the assessment as a diagnostic modality. So it has a role. What important thing, what I can comment is, if you do a collapse point evaluation in a COVID lung, then you may get the signs of ARDS, this like fractal signs or the shred sign and the tissue-like consistency of the lung compared to the liver. So all these signs will be there, which are there already in the COVID lungs, in the severe cases of the COVID lungs. If the patient is asymptomatic, it doesn't have lung affection, then I think the normal lung profile will be there. Important thing is it affects bilaterally. So if you have a abnormal presentations bilaterally at the bilateral PAPS points, usually it is a viral induced or ARDS or the consolidations, infiltrations or septal thickenings and all that signs will be there. B sign, you can get a B lines also with if the lungs are filled with the septa are filled with the fluids and interstitial syndromes. All that will be seen in the severe cases of the in the COVID patients, those who have pulmonary affections.
Yeah. Thanks you so much for explaining this. So in fact, sir, I know that this point of care lung ultrasound is getting very, very popular these days. And the content was very, very, very easy to understand, and you have explained really well. And overall, it's a great learning for us. Thank you so much again for joining us. Would like to have you once again for some other topic. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Basharaj. Thank you so much.
Dr. Abhijeet, this is John, and you have received a lot of compliments from the lot of delegates, and one compliment from the biggest, topmost, senior-most cardiologist, Dr. Adagasan sir. Dr. Adagasan sir will be the father of echocardiography. He also appreciated you very well. And Adagasan sir, anything final comment from your side, sir?
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Dr. Abhijeet, it was a very good coverage of the blue protocol and the false protocol. So I was actually talking on the rush protocol for the diagnosis of shock and ultrasound, shock by echocardiography and ultrasound. So at that time I was going through the lung ultrasound. So your talk was much more clear, and I was able to pick up more points from your talk. Thank you very much. It was a very good. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining, sir. This is John, sir.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining. Shall we wind
Thank
up?
you, Vinota. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir, Dr. Abhijeet.
Thank you, Basharaj, for giving this opportunity.
Yeah, no, sir. Yeah, very soon we'll have one more topic from you, sir.
No problem. I am available.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, participants.
Should I?
Yeah, sir. Yeah, you can disconnect, sir, in fact.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
and good night. Yeah.
Good night, sir.